You're never going to run out of problems in life, but here's what nobody tells you. It's that the goal isn't to have no problems. The goal is to just have better problems. And this is something that I want to talk about because when I had this reframe, it was very simple, but it actually changed how I move through my life. And I realized you can't have a problem free life. As nice as it sounds, that's just not how it works. There is no version of life. There's no amount of money. There's no amount of success. There's no amount of inner work that will get you to a place where problems cease to exist. But I think what does change and what you actually have control over are the level of problems that you deal with. And I think that this is a really important conversation because I see so many of us spending enormous amounts of energy on problems that aren't actually growing us, on problems that are keeping us small, on problems that are taking up our mental real estate, which could be occupied by things that actually matter. And this is something that I've done. This is something that I still fall into sometimes. But with that level of self awareness that I've developed, I've been introduced to new choice, right? And now I see, wow, my energy is such a valuable resource and it's finite. And whether my energy is always going to be spent, whether I'm intentional about it or not. So the question is, why not be intentional about where I'm directing my energy? So I want to explain to you what I mean by upgrading your problems. Um, there are two buckets. So the first bucket I would call the small problems. And then the second bucket I would call the big problems. And in the small problem bucket are things that are irritants on a daily basis. Maybe like you're just normal day to day stuff. So, oh, someone left dishes in the sink, or my laundry wasn't folded in the way that I wanted to, or the bed wasn't made. And also in the small bucket are things like um, things that feel urgent but are actually not important, things that are low stakes but end up consuming your entire afternoon. Small bucket problems are unnecessary drama that is just on loop and continues to repeat and get recycled. Also in the small problems bucket are worries about things that either cannot be changed or won't happen. And then I think the things that we spend energy on that would look completely irrelevant in 6 months also belong in the small problems bucket. Then we have the big problems bucket, right? And these are the things that the problems around um, maybe navigating a life transition or doing inner work that actually changes who you are and how you relate to the world. These are the decisions that impact your quality of life and your livelihood. These are in the big problems bucket are things that involve showing up for you know the things that are aligned with where you want to go and who you are. The problems that come with actually building something that's a bit bigger than who you are. And both of these buckets are problems, but I think we need to be honest with ourselves that they are not the same kind of problem, right? And if we focus on one bucket over another, the life that we create for ourselves is going to look very different. So, what I have noticed about the small problems bucket is that everything in that bucket basically masks itself as being urgent, and it has this way of making it feel like these things need our attention right now. And if we don't give it our attention, like then something bad is going to happen. We need to deal with these things immediately. But when you actually look at it, a lot of the things in this bucket are relatively minor. They're also most likely solvable, and they're low stakes, as in they're not going to have a significant impact on your quality of life, on your well being, your livelihood. Something important will not be lost, right? And then we have a tendency to focus on this bucket, right? We give it our energy, we talk about it, we ruminate on it, we think about it more than it deserves. And it occupies mental real estate that could be going towards the bigger things, right? So enter our big problems bucket. And these are the things that actually require our attention and courage and our sustained energy so that we can get to where we want. These are the things that shouldn't stay on the back burner, but usually they are because we're so focused on the small bucket, because we're so busy with the small things, right? Because something else in the small bucket came up, because there's always something else. And I think that's how a lot of people end up spending months, years, decades focused on small things and realizing that a lot of the stuff in the big bucket has been left untouched, right? So I it's important for us each to get honest with ourselves and know the difference between what is in our small bucket and what is in our big bucket. We know when something genuinely needs our attention versus when we're just spinning our wheels on something that's not important in the grand scheme. When we're trying to solve um, a problem versus when we're using a problem to avoid something bigger, something harder, something more important. And that's a distinction that we each have to come to within ourselves, right? I can't tell you, oh, that's a small problem and that's a big problem. I think you really need to reflect and think about, of all the things I'm spending my energy on, how would I rank them in terms of like which problems are small versus which are medium versus which are big, right? And like I said, this has shown up in my life too. I used to spend a lot of energy on things that, looking back, were very, very minor. And I think part of it was because focusing on minor things gave me a sense of control and it also kept me comfortable. But at some point, I recognized I wasn't moving forward towards the things that were actually really important to me because I was spending so much time overthinking decisions that didn't really matter much. I was spending so much time getting caught up in low stakes day-to-day challenges, and letting things that were easily solvable take up so much of my mental space, more mental space than they deserved. And then underneath that, I, was this desire to really create a different type of life, to change careers, right? To build this life that I envisioned for myself, to do some sort of inner work. But those things, again, got pushed to the back burner because all of my energy was expended, um, you know, on things in the small bucket, right? So I was just focused on solving the wrong problems. And that changed how my life looked because I focused on the small stuff and neglected the big stuff that would make a difference in the long term. So I think that I think there are several reasons why we focus a lot on the small bucket. And I think part of it is because the small problems may feel a bit safer. We feel like we have a bit of control. Maybe we know how to solve them or we feel more capable in solving them. They may not require us to be vulnerable or uncertain or take a risk. Um, Whereas the bigger problems are honestly the complete opposite, right? They are going to stretch you outside of your comfort zone. They're going to require something from you, probably for a long duration of time. There's not an easy answer for the big problems bucket. You're going to end up having to navigate uncertainty and fear and this possibility that, okay, things might look different than I expected, or it may not work out. So I think because of that, we tend to keep ourselves busy with the small stuff. And then we call it being productive. But then we wonder, why doesn't my life look the way that I actually want it to? So I share this with you because for me, it has been massive to be very deliberate in where I direct my attention, right? Being very deliberate and very conscious about shifting my attention to the things that are important in the grand scheme of things and shifting it away from the things that drain me without growing me. Um, and like I mentioned earlier, it's your energy is valuable currency. And you can spend that energy recycling the same worries and putting it into decisions that actually don't matter much or don't have much impact in the grand scheme. Or you can put that energy into decisions that actually need to be made and that will actually move you towards the life that you want. So instead of letting small irritants disrupt your afternoon, your day, your week, your month, your year, protect the time, protect your time, your attention, and your energy, and shift it towards something that will actually move you somewhere.